Okay, in this lesson we're going to learn how to use Photoshop clipping masks and layer styles to create a really powerful image that fills letters with images. This is a great way to integrate Photoshop into any classroom really. So let's start by going to Photoshop. And this time, instead of opening up an image, we're going to go to File and New and start with a blank canvas. We're going to make it 8 inches wide so that it'll fit on a report or on a piece of paper, and about 3 inches tall so that it could be a nice banner on the top of your page. Because we're going to print this in the end, we want the resolution to be at 300 dots per inch, or 300. For a name, let's call it Power, and go ahead and hit OK. Let's grab the text tool, and let's select a big, fat, thick font. I've chosen SEGOE UI Black. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. So I've chosen that. I've come over here to my font size. I've typed in 100 and let's try 150. 160 was a little too big. And I've chosen black for my color. Then go ahead and click a single time out here. And with caps lock on, let's just type a P. Now I want each one of these letters to be on their own layer, so I'm going to hit the Move tool, move it approximately down there, go back to the text tool and hit O. Hit the Move tool, and you'll notice that as I move, I'm getting these smart guides, and that tells me that the bottoms are lined up. So we're just going to do this one letter at a time, single click, W. Notice that I have caps lock on, so I'm getting all capital letters. Okay, and I'm just going back and forth. Here's my E. And R. So that shouldn't take us too long. All right. You can spend a little bit of time adjusting them, but don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start moving these images in. So I'm going to select the P, and I'm just going to work my way from left to right. So I selected the P layer over here on my Layers panel. Then I'm going to go up to File and Embed. Place Embedded. Now, if you're using an older version of Photoshop, you might just have Embed. In the newer versions, they separated these, Place Linked and Place Embedded. Then I'm going to go find an image. Now, I've given you some images if you're using my sample images for this lesson, so I'm going to use the power wave for this. I'm going to hit Place. I'm going to move it over next to the P. I'm going to resize it later, so I'm just going to get it approximately in the right spot and then hit the check mark to finish that. You can also hit Enter. Now I want to clip it to that letter using a clipping mask. So I'm going to come over here to my Layers panel, hold Alt down, and notice how my cursor turns into a different symbol. It has a black down arrow and a white box. As soon as I click it, if you come back over here to your panel, you can see that now the image is inside the letter P. I could resize it if I want, move it around, and as soon as I'm done, I'm going to hit the check mark. Now we're going to do this one letter at a time, so I'm going to go to the O, do it again, Place Embedded. This time I'm going to do the nuclear power plants, I think. Move them approximately in space, hit the check mark, come over here, hold Alt down on the keyboard, put my cursor in between the two layers, and clip it. Okay, and again, I'm going to resize it a little here, so maybe you can see a couple different silos there, and then hit the Enter or the check mark. So you're going to do this one at a time. Letter on the Layers panel, then Place Embedded. Get it in the right spot, hit Enter, hold Alt down, and at this point I think I'm going to go ahead and pause my tutorial. Okay, so here's my last one. I'm going to put it in here. By doing them as individual letters, I don't have to worry about them interacting with each other. If you do the whole word, then you have to worry about, this image being on top of this image. So by doing it as individual letters, it takes a little bit more time to set up, but then in the end, it's a little bit easier. Okay, so I've got all my letters set up and the images in there, and that's a cool image as it is. But by adding layer styles, I can kind of give each letter a little bit more definition. So I'm going to come back down here and I'm going to select the T layer, or sorry, the P layer. So I'm just going to kind of go back and do one layer at a time. And then layer styles are a really powerful way of separating the background from an image. So at the bottom of your layers panel, you're going to have a little FX symbol. If you click on that, you're going to get all these different cool layer styles. Now, one of my favorites is drop shadow. So I'm just going to start with a drop shadow. And here's my options. You can see it changing because I have preview selected right here, this preview. So make sure that's selected. And you can play around with the distance, the size, and the spread. All right, so that's pretty good, but I think I could add more. So I'm going to come up here to stroke, and I'm going to check that, and you can see I can change the size. Don't get too crazy. That's really going to add a lot of definition. Now here's something cool and new in CC 2015. If you haven't seen this before, you'll notice that I have a second stroke. How did I get that? I just hit the plus symbol the last time I was in here, and now I have 2 strokes. So I could check that and have a second color. Oh my gosh, that is sweet and new. I love that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now, what if I want this same layer style over here on this letter? I could one at a time add each of those layer styles. So click on the O, come down here to FX, hit drop shadow, and it will remember my last 2 choices. So it doesn't take too long. That wasn't too bad. Go ahead and hit OK. But here's an even better way to do it. So over here on my layers panel, you can notice that I've got this FX on the O now and all these effects applied here. You can collapse it with this little arrow or open it back up. And at any time, if you want to hide those, you can hide them. They have eyeballs, just like we've learned to hide whole layers. You can hide whole layer styles. Well, here's the cool thing. You can copy those layer styles from one layer to another very quickly and easily. You can hold Alt down and drag up there. There we go. That looks much better. So I'm going to just do the Alt drag. So I'm holding Alt down and dragging the little FX from the W layer up to the E layer. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing from E to R. I'll collapse all of those. And now I've got this great word that's spelling out in images what I'm trying to communicate about power. Now, last thing you want to do is save it. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to make sure that I save it as a Photoshop file first, because that's going to give me all the layers, and I can come in here and continue to tweak it if I need to. Then I'm going to save it as a Photoshop or JPEG, because most, like Microsoft Word or Google Drive, they're going to want to insert an image file in JPEG format or GIF format or PNG or something like that, not Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and save it into my same folder, my samples folder. I'm going to crank up the quality all the way to the top and hit OK. And now I'm saved. Now I recommend you go out and try this right away with a different word and different images. You can download them from the internet, or you could take the pictures yourself.